The Reclamation of Brooke. Hello everyone. If you've ever been underestimated, this is the story for you. A story of betrayal, revenge, and the power to reclaim your own destiny. Hit like, subscribe, and get ready for a night that will change everything. Let's begin. The velvet box closed with a click that resonated like the slamming door on a life they had built. Brooke Sterling stared at it, perched on the cold marble of her kitchen island, her hand instinctively cradling the gentle curve of her 6-month pregnancy. Inside that box was the diamond necklace Ethan Finch had promised she would wear to the Gala of the Stars, the social event of the year. But the necklace, like the promise, was no longer for her. His words, short and devoid of warmth, still hung in the air between them, more chilling than the sterile, minimalist design of their penthouse. "You're just not ready for an event, Brooke. It's for the best." She had been replaced, his pregnant wife, for the sake of appearances. But he could never have imagined who would be holding her hand when she walked through those ballroom doors that very night. The silence on the 52nd floor of the Nexus Tower was a living entity. It breathed the scent of expensive leather and glass cleaner, and it exhaled a deep, soul-shattering emptiness. Only minutes ago, it had been filled with Ethan's soft, justifying voice, each word a carefully polished stone thrown at Brooke's heart. Her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a woman she barely recognized. It wasn't just the pregnancy that had softened her angles and given a new, vulnerable curve to her body. It was the look in her eyes, a tired, hurt disbelief. She and Ethan had been a team. She was the quiet architect, whose vision for structure and foundation had helped him see the groundwork for a business, while he was the charismatic face of Finch & Day Realty, the man who could sell a dream with a handshake and a dazzling smile. She had set aside her own promising career to support his meteoric rise, a sacrifice she made willingly for the future they were building for the child she now carried. "It's a business necessity, Brooke," he had told her, adjusting the cuffs on his $1,000 shirt. "We need to project a certain image, power, unencumbered energy. Robert Day will be there. We're about to hit the big leagues. Unencumbered." The word had caught in her throat, tasting like poison. "Is that what our baby is, Ethan? An encumbrance?" He had finally turned, his face a mask of practiced patience, the kind a parent uses with a difficult child. "Don't be dramatic. This is for one night. You're tired all the time. Your ankles are swollen. It's better for you to rest. Better for the situation," she whispered to the empty room now. "Not for our baby. Not for our son. The situation." The final brutal blow was the name that slipped from his lips. He would be taking Chloe Bell. Chloe was a young associate at his firm, a woman of sharp angles, even sharper ambition, and a smile that never quite reached her cold, calculating eyes. Brooke had seen the way Chloe looked at Ethan at the last company party, not with admiration, but with the predatory gaze of a shark that had smelled blood. She sank to the warm tiles, letting the sobs out, deep, ragged sounds of a world coming apart. It wasn't just the humiliation of the dance. It was the casual cruelty, the dismissal of her as a person, as his wife, as the mother of his child. She was a line item in his life that had become inconvenient, a variable in his equation for success that needed to be temporarily eliminated. She cried for the woman she had been, the bright, hopeful girl who had fallen in love with a charming, ambitious man. The hours bled together. The sun, a burning orange ball, began its descent over the city, painting the sky with shades of hurt and sadness. Brooke rose. Her face was stained, her eyes red. She looked at her reflection again, but this time, something else glinted behind the pain. It was anger, a cold, clear, diamond-hard fury that began to crystallize in the ruins of her heart. He thought she was weak, a hindrance, a tired, swollen woman to be hidden away, while he and his mistress paraded, securing his future. He had underestimated her. He had forgotten who she was before she became Mrs. Ethan Finch. He had forgotten the woman who could command a boardroom with a quiet presentation, the woman who could spot the fatal flaw in a building's design from a single blueprint, the woman who had tenacity woven into her very soul. She walked back into the living room, her steps now firm. Her gaze fell on her laptop. A wild, bold idea ignited in her mind. It was a risky gambit, a desperate long shot armed with nothing but a memory and a sliver of professional pride. Years ago, before she set her career aside, Brooke had run a small but innovative nonprofit called Urbanitas, focused on creating sustainable community green spaces in neglected city areas. They were brilliant, but broke. In one last desperate attempt, she had secured a meeting with the Knight Foundation, the philanthropic giant founded by the legendary and legendarily reclusive tech billionaire, Dominic Knight. She hadn't met the man in person. The meeting was with his board. But as she was packing up her presentation, a low, quiet voice had spoken from the doorway. It was him, Dominic Knight. "Your vision is 20 years ahead of its time, Ms. Sterling," he had said, his voice resonating with a quiet power. "The board is too conservative. They'll fund another hospital wing. It's safer." He handed her his private business card. It was a thick, black card, with just a name and a number. "The world will catch up to you eventually. When it does, or when you need a partner who understands that a foundation is meant to build the future, not just patch up the present. Call this number. No assistants, no gatekeepers. Just me." She had kept the card, a memento of a dream that had almost been. She had never dared to use it. Until now. Her hands trembled as she pulled the card from a keepsake box in her old desk drawer. The number stood out against the black. This was insane. Calling one of the richest men in the world on the night of a gala he was sponsoring, a gala her husband was attending with his mistress. What would she even say? She looked at her belly, and her son gave a gentle kick, as if to encourage her. This was no longer just about her pride. This was about his future. A future with a mother who didn't fall apart, who didn't hide. A mother who fought. Taking a deep, shaky breath, she dialed the number. It rang once. Twice. She was about to hang up, her courage failing, when the line connected. "Knight!" The voice was exactly as she remembered. Quiet, direct, authoritative. "Mr. Knight," she began, her voice barely a whisper. She cleared her throat. "My name is Brooke Sterling. We spoke once, several years ago, about your project, Urbanitas." There was a pause. For a terrifying second, she thought he wouldn't remember her, that she would be dismissed as just another nuisance call. "I remember it, Ms. Sterling," he said, and she could have wept with relief. "Socially conscious, sustainable architecture. You wanted to build a park on top of a derelict warehouse downtown. I told you the board was stupid." The tears sprang to her eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow. "Yes, that was me. Your call is timely. I was just going over the guest list for this ridiculous Gala of the Stars I am forced to attend tonight. Your husband, Ethan Finch, is on the list. I presume you are calling to say you'll be accompanying him." The dam broke. The words came gushing out. Not a polished speech, but a raw, honest confession of her situation. She told him about her husband's cruelty, about Chloe Bell, about being cast aside because her pregnancy was an inconvenience to his ambition. She didn't ask for pity. She framed it as a business proposal born of desperation. "Mr. Knight, My life has just been fundamentally restructured. I need to secure a future for my son, and I can't do it by hiding. I need to relaunch my work. The Gala of the Stars is for the hope of children. The most influential people in the city will be there. I need to be there, too. Not as a victim, but as the founder of the Sterling Initiative. I need a backer, not for the night, but for a new beginning. I know this is a crazy, unprofessional request, but you told me to call when I needed a partner to build the future. Well, my future just started today. The silence on the other end of the line stretched on, and Brooke held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had laid bare her entire broken soul. Finally, Dominic Knight spoke again. His voice had lost its dispassionate edge, replaced by something more. A note of steel. "Ms. Sterling," he said slowly, "I despise bullies, and I loathe men who mistake kindness for weakness. Your husband is making a grave error tonight, but his mistake will be your opportunity." He paused. "I am the main sponsor of tonight's event. It is terribly boring, and I was planning to make a token appearance and leave, but you have just given me a reason to stay. You don't need a backer for the night, Brooke. You need an ally, a partner. Be ready in 90 minutes. My car will be downstairs." Brooke was stunned, speechless. "And Brooke," Dominic added, his voice low and firm, "wear something that makes you feel powerful. Tonight we're not just attending a dance, we're making a statement." The line went dead. Brooke stared at her phone, her mind reeling. The despair that had paralyzed her just an hour ago was gone, replaced by a terrifying and exhilarating rush of adrenaline. She wasn't just going to the dance, she was going to war. The triumphant entrance, 90 minutes. It was an impossible deadline that paradoxically made everything possible. There was no time for doubt, no room for fear. There was only action. Brooke's first course of action was to walk into her and Ethan's walk-in closet. Her gaze fell on a garment bag, in the back, a purchase from a year ago she had never quite dared to wear. It was a gown from a designer known for dressing royalty and industry titans. A silk dress of a deep emerald green that shimmered like a forest pond at midnight. It was not a maternity dress, but its empire waist design and flowing A-line skirt could work. She slipped it on. The silk was cool against her feverish skin. It fit. Not perfectly, but beautifully. The high waist settled just above her belly, falling in a cascade of fabric that made her look not hidden or swollen, but majestic, ethereal. It was the armor she needed. Next, her jewelry box. She pushed aside the pretty, delicate things Ethan had bought her. Her hand closed around a piece her grandmother had left her, a stunning platinum and onyx Art Deco necklace. It was bold, almost severe, a statement of strength and heritage. It settled perfectly against her collarbones, a striking, beautiful contrast to the soft green of the dress. As she got ready, her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "A team is en route to your service entrance. They are from me. Let them in, DK." Minutes later, her doorbell rang. Outside were a man and a woman, both dressed in discreet black. They radiated a quiet, formidable competence. "Ms. Sterling," the woman said, introducing herself as Lena, with a small, respectful nod. "Mr. Knight sent us. I'm here for hair and makeup. My colleague, George, is here for security and to ensure your smooth departure." Brooke was dumbfounded. This was a level of operational efficiency she had only ever read about. Lena worked with a speed and precision that were mesmerizing. "We're not going to hide the pregnancy," Lena declared, more like a commander giving an order than a stylist making a suggestion. "We're going to celebrate it. The glow is your greatest asset. We'll highlight it. Power and serenity." As Lena put the finishing touches on her, Brooke looked at herself in the mirror. The broken, tear-stained woman from hours ago was gone. In her place, a queen. She looked powerful. Yes, but more than that. She looked serene. She looked like a woman who knew her own worth. A woman who was on the precipice of her own life, not falling off the edge of someone else's. Meanwhile, George, the silent security man, had made a discreet sweep of the apartment. He spoke into a discreet comms device on his wrist. "Asset secured. Preparing for extraction in 10. Have the vehicle ready at the South Service exit. No press." What do you think of Brooke's preparation? Do you believe a simple change of clothes can change everything? Leave your opinion in the comments. Just as Lena was packing up her kit, Brooke's phone vibrated again. It was Ethan. A text with a photo. It was him and Chloe posing in front of a mirror. He was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, a smug, triumphant look on his face. Chloe was draped on his arm, in a shimmering, form-fitting silver dress. The diamond necklace, her necklace, was around Chloe's neck. The caption read, "Wish you were here, having a great time." The cruelty was so blatant, so juvenile, it was almost laughable. A month ago, it would have shattered her. An hour ago, it would have made her feel sick. Now, looking at her reflection in the mirror, she felt a strange sense of pity for him. He was a boy playing king, completely unaware that a real power was about to enter the game. She didn't reply. She simply deleted the message. "It's time, Ms. Sterling," George said from the doorway. Lena gave her one last look. "You look magnificent," she said. And for the first time, a genuine smile touched her lips. "Go get what's yours." Brooke walked out of the apartment she had shared with Ethan. Without a single look back, George led her down a service elevator, bypassing the grand lobby. When the doors opened into a private underground garage, a sleek black Bentley, the kind that whispers wealth rather than shouts it, was purring quietly. The driver, also in a discreet suit, opened the door for her. The car's interior was a cocoon of silent luxury. As they pulled out into the city traffic, Brooke finally allowed herself a moment to breathe. The adrenaline was still running through her veins, but now it was tempered with a steely determination. The car did not head directly for the Palace Hotel, where the gala was being held. Instead, it pulled up to a discreet, ivy-covered brownstone in the West Village. "Mr. Knight will meet you here," George said. "He prefers to avoid the tumult of the main entrance." The door to the brownstone opened before she reached it, revealing Dominic Knight. He was taller than she remembered, dressed in a classic, exquisitely cut tuxedo. He was not handsome in the conventional, polished way Ethan was. His was a face carved by intelligence and experience, his salt and pepper hair adding to his air of authority. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue, assessed her in a single instant. He took in the dress, the necklace, and the determination in her jaw. A slow smile of approval spread across his face. "Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice a low murmur of satisfaction. "Brooke, you look like a woman who can build empires." "That's my intention," she replied. Her voice steady. "Good," he said, and he offered her his arm. "Because we are about to lay the first brick." He led her inside, not to a drawing room, but to a high-tech office. A massive screen on the wall showed a live feed of the gala's entrance. The red carpet was a frenzy of cameras and journalists. "Standard reconnaissance," Dominic explained, gesturing to the screen. "Know the lay of the land before you step onto the field." He pointed to a figure on the screen. "There, that's Robert Day, your husband's boss, a man who respects only two things, money and power." He was giving her a battlefield briefing. He wasn't treating her like a spurned wife who needed a white knight. He was treating her like a general, and he was her strategist. They watched for a few moments as Ethan and Chloe made their grand entrance. The cameras swarmed them. Ethan was in his element, preening, soaking up the attention. Chloe, for her part, played the adoring partner to perfection. "He's strutting," Dominic observed, a note of disdain in his voice. "He thinks this is his moment of triumph. He has no idea it's merely the opening act." He turned away from the screen to face her. His expression was serious. "Now, for our terms of engagement. Tonight, you are not my date. You are my business partner. We are here to announce the relaunch of your vision, backed by the full weight of the Knight Foundation. I am not rescuing you, Brooke. I am investing in you. The revenge is merely a fortuitous byproduct." He took a sleek black portfolio from his desk and handed it to her. "A preliminary proposal for the Sterling Initiative. I had my team draft it this last hour. It outlines an initial $5 million in funding to begin the feasibility studies on 3 of your original Urbanitas projects. It's real. It's effective immediately." Brooke opened the portfolio. Her hands trembled as she read the words. It was her dream, not just revisited, but magnified, empowered. Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," he said doffpois. "Just succeed. That will be thanks enough." He looked at his watch. "Cocktail hour has just started. The key players are all inside. Shall we?" He offered her his arm again. This time, when she took it, it felt different. It was no longer the arm of a rescuer. It was the arm of a partner, an ally. As they walked toward the door, Brooke felt the last remnants of the victim fall away. She was no longer Ethan Finch's discarded wife. She was Brooke Sterling, founder of the Sterling Initiative, and she was about to make her entrance. The legacy, the ballroom of the Palace Hotel, was a testament to obscene wealth. Chandeliers dripping with fist-sized crystals hung from a gilded ceiling, casting a warm, golden glow over the city's elite. The air buzzed with the murmur of 1,000 conversations, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the distant strains of a string quartet. This was Ethan Finch's natural habitat. And for the first hour, it was. With Chloe Bell on his arm, a glittering accessory that validated his sense of virility and power, Ethan moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of a master salesman. He shook hands with bankers, laughed with tech entrepreneurs, and shared a conspiratorial whisper with a city councilman. Chloe, for her part, played the adoring partner to perfection. "Ethan, darlin', Robert Day is looking," Chloe purred. "He's with the senator. This is your chance." Ethan's heart gave a little flutter of ambition. Day was the kingmaker of Finch and Day, a man whose approval he craved with a desperate hunger. He adjusted his bow tie, put on his most confident smile, and steered Chloe toward them. "Robert, Senator," Ethan boomed, extending a hand. "A magnificent night for a worthy cause." Robert Day, a man with eyes like granite chips, gave him a curt nod. "Finch, good of you to come. And this is—" His gaze fell on Chloe, appraising and dismissive. "Chloe Bell," Ethan said smoothly, "one of our brightest rising stars at the firm." "I see," Day said, his tone suggesting he saw a great deal. But before the awkward silence could turn sour, a sudden quiet fell over the section of the ballroom closest to the grand entrance. The murmur of conversation faltered. Heads began to turn one by one, like dominoes falling in a line. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. Every phone that had been discreetly tucked away was suddenly lifted, cameras pointing toward the door. Ethan, annoyed by the interruption, turned to see what the commotion was about, and then his world stopped, framed in the magnificent entrance, bathed in the light from the chandeliers, was Brooke. His Brooke. But she was not the Brooke he had left weeping in their penthouse. This was not the tired, comfortable woman he had deemed unready for an event. This was a goddess. The emerald green of her gown was a swath of vibrant life in a sea of black tuxedos and shimmering but safe dresses. The onyx at her throat was a declaration of war. Her pregnancy was not a flaw to be hidden, but a source of radiant power, making her appear formidable and divine. She was breathtaking, and she was on the arm of Dominic Knight. Brooke's hand was held firmly by his. It was a gesture of deep intimacy and partnership that said far more than a simple public appearance. Dominic Knight, the billionaire ghost, the man who never attended these events for more than a fleeting moment, was standing there looking at Brooke with an expression of deep, undisguised admiration. Ethan's smile froze on his face, a rictus of horror. The blood drained from his head. This was impossible. This was a nightmare. How in the hell did she know Dominic Knight? Chloe's grip on his arm tightened, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his bicep. "Ethan, what the hell is that?" she hissed, her voice tight with panic. "That's your wife!" Robert Day's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He looked from Ethan's face to the radiant vision in the doorway and back again. The contempt that had been simmering just beneath the surface of his expression now bloomed into full-blown disdain. "Finch," he said, his voice dangerously low, "you have some explaining to do." But Ethan couldn't speak. He could only watch as Dominic Knight guided Brooke toward the center of the room. The crowd parted for them, as if they were royalty. The people Ethan had been so desperate to impress were now tripping over themselves to get Dominic's attention, their glances darting from the billionaire to the stunning woman at his side. The string quartet seemed to falter. The photographers, who had been content to take photos of B-list celebrities and social climbers, now swarmed the entrance, their flashes creating a wall of blinding light. Dominic guided Brooke to the center of the room. He paused to greet the senator, completely ignoring Ethan and Robert Day, who stood frozen just a few feet away. "Senator," Dominic said, his voice easily audible in the now quieter room. "A pleasure. I want to introduce you to my new partner. This is Ms. Brooke Sterling, the founder of the soon-to-be relaunched Sterling Initiative." He used her maiden name. The cut was so deep, so precise, that Ethan felt it like a physical blow. The senator, a man Ethan had been trying to get a meeting with for 6 months, beamed at Brooke. "Ms. Sterling, it's an absolute honor. Dominic has talked about nothing else for the last week. He says your vision for sustainable urban development is revolutionary. We have to talk." Ethan's mind fractured. Talked about nothing else for the last week. This wasn't a last-minute deal. This was a plan. A coordinated, strategic demolition of his entire world. He finally found his voice, a choked, pathetic sound. "Brooke," she turned to him. Her eyes, luminous and powerful, met his. There was no hatred in them, no anger, only a quiet, cool pity that was infinitely more devastating. She looked at him as if he were a stranger, a minor obstacle she had already mentally cleared from her path. "Ethan," she said, her voice even. "I don't believe you've been introduced to my business partner, Mr. Dominic Knight." Dominic looked at Ethan, and for the first time, Ethan Keats understood the difference between being rich and being powerful. Ethan's wealth was an act. Dominic's power was a fundamental state of being. Knight's blue eyes were like ice. "Mr. Finch," Dominic said, his voice a silent blade. "I believe you know Ms. Sterling." He looked at Chloe, his eyes taking in the diamond necklace. "A lovely piece. I trust the original owner won't be wanting it back." Chloe turned a deep mottled red, her hand flying instinctively to her throat. In that one phrase, Dominic Knight had branded her a thief in front of the most influential people in the city. Her social capital, so carefully curated, had just been incinerated. Before Ethan could stammer a response, the gala's host walked up to the main microphone on the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, it's time for our main event, the star auction." A wave of relief washed over Ethan. The auction. This was his chance to recover. He planned to bid on the top item, the naming rights for a new pediatric wing at the city hospital. A splashy, 7-figure donation would put him back in the spotlight, show his power, and erase this humiliation. The bidding began. It quickly climbed to 500,000. Then 1,000,000. Finally, it was down to 2 bidders, Ethan and a rival real estate developer. The room watched in fascination. "1.5 million," Ethan called out, his voice strained, desperate to reclaim his territory. His rival hesitated, and then shook his head, conceding. A smattering of applause broke out. Ethan felt a sliver of his bravado return. He looked at Robert Day, expecting to see a glint of restored respect. Day was watching, but his face was unreadable. "1.5 million going once," the auctioneer called out. "Going twice." "5 million," a quiet voice said from the center of the room. A collective gasp went through the ballroom. All heads turned to Dominic Knight. He hadn't even raised his hand. He had simply spoken. The auctioneer was flustered. "I have $5 million from Mr. Dominic Knight." Ethan felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. He couldn't compete with that. He was finished. But Dominic wasn't done. He raised a hand for silence. "And," he announced, his voice resonating with authority, "the Knight Foundation will, of course, be funding the new pediatric wing. But my $5 million bid tonight is for something else. It is the seed capital to launch a vital new venture that I am proud to be partnering with. An initiative that embodies the spirit of tonight's gala, investing in a better future for our children." He turned and smiled at Brooke, a smile of genuine pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, this donation officially launches the Sterling Initiative under the brilliant leadership of its founder, Brooke Sterling." What would you do if you found yourself in Ethan's situation? Do you think public humiliation is a fair punishment for his betrayal? The room erupted in applause that was louder and more genuine than any before. It wasn't just applause for a generous donation. It was the sound of a new star being born. Robert Day was clapping, a slow, calculating smile now on his face as he looked at Brooke with a new respect. The senator was patting her on the shoulder. The city's power players were surrounding her, congratulating her, wanting a piece of her. She was the center of the universe, and Ethan Finch was a ghost standing at the edge of the void, watching the life he had discarded be crowned. Chloe had already vanished from his side, slinking away into the crowd like the specter she was. He was completely and devastatingly alone. Brooke met his eyes one last time across the crowded room. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a gesture of triumph or malice. It was a gesture of farewell, a final goodbye. Then she turned back to her new life, her hand held firmly by Dominic Knight, her face lit by the bright, blinding light of her own future. The fallout from the Gala of the Stars was not a slow burn. It was a detonation. By the time the last of the champagne had been drunk and the limos had whisked away the city's elite, Ethan Finch's social and professional life lay in smoking ruins. The story was too delicious, too perfectly archetypal for the ecosystem of high society to ignore. He walked out of the dance alone, a ghost shuffling through the leftovers of a party that only hours before had felt like his coronation. The next morning, his fears were realized in spectacular fashion. The city's most influential and feared society blogger, Peyton Page, published her recap of the gala. Her column, The Page Verdict, was required reading for anyone who was anyone, and she had taken to her subject with the vicious relish of a master butcher. The headline was a masterpiece of gloating. Night's new lady, billionaire Back's spurned wife, in power play for the ages. Ethan read the text on his tablet, the coffee he had just brewed turning to acid in his stomach. Ethan, in a desperate attempt to reclaim a shred of his dignity, engaged in a bidding war for the naming rights to a hospital wing. It was a pathetic spectacle, like a poodle yapping at a lion. And then the lion roared. Dominic Knight, with 2 words and a $5 million bid, not only won the auction, but publicly reassigned Mr. Finch's wife's destiny, anointing her as the head of a new Knight-backed initiative. Rarely has such a complete and utter public vivisection been witnessed. By the end of the night, Mr. Finch was left with nothing but a canceled check and the ghost of a career. His phone rang, shrill and demanding. It was Robert Day's assistant. "Mr. Day wants to see you in his office. Now." The tone was arctic, promising an execution. When he entered the top-floor office, the view of the city was obscured by the drawn blinds. Day stood by the window, his back to the door. "I built my reputation, and this firm's reputation, on 2 principles, Finch," Day began, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Strength and foresight. I expect my senior partners to embody those same principles, to project them, to live them." He finally turned, and his face was a mask of cold fury. "Last night you showed neither. You showed a catastrophic weakness by allowing your messy personal life to explode in the most public forum imaginable, making yourself, and by extension, this firm, a laughingstock." He slapped a copy of the Financial Chronicle onto his desk. "But that is not your greatest sin," Day continued, his voice dropping even lower. "Your greatest sin was a complete, unforgivable, and ruinous lack of foresight. Dominic Knight doesn't make investments. He builds kingdoms. He alters landscapes. And you fool, you handed him a queen. You had a direct, intimate line to a woman he clearly values, a woman with vision, a woman who is now his strategic partner, and you were too blind, too arrogant, too stupid to see her value. You not only failed to recognize a valuable asset, you actively discarded it. You made us look like we couldn't recognize value when it's sleeping in our own bed." The firing was swift and merciless. He was to clear his desk by noon. There was no negotiation, no severance. He was a liability, an infected limb being amputated before the gangrene could spread. For Brooke, the days following the gala were a whirlwind of a different kind. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, but the calls were from architects she had long admired, urban planners, journalists from national publications, and even an old professor from college. "I always knew you had it, Brooke," he had said, his voice brimming with pride. "You just needed the right foundation." She realized with stunning clarity that her value had always been there. It had just been dormant, overshadowed by Ethan's blinding ambition. True to his word, Dominic was a partner, not a savior. He arranged a meeting 2 days after the gala, not in a boardroom, but in a bright, spacious loft in the Soho neighborhood, with exposed brick walls and massive windows. "A temporary headquarters," he said, gesturing to the empty space. "Think of it as a blank canvas. Your canvas." Brooke walked the loft, a hand resting on her stomach. She could feel the potential of the space, the light, the energy. It felt like her future. "It's perfect," she sighed. "This is your vision, Brooke," he told her, his tone serious as they stood looking out at the streets below. "My foundation will provide you with the resources, the legal team, the financial advisors, the PR infrastructure. They are tools for you to use. I am not your boss. I am your ally, your first investor. Your success is the only return I'm interested in." His respect was a balm on the wound of Ethan's contempt. He saw her mind, her talent, her resilience, and he valued it. A week after the gala, a legal messenger arrived at the penthouse while Ethan was in the middle of the humiliating task of packing his suits and trinkets into cardboard boxes. The messenger handed him a manila envelope. Inside were divorce papers. They had been filed on the grounds of infidelity and irreconcilable differences, the language cold and efficient. Brooke was not asking for the penthouse or punitive compensation. The documents outlined a simple, clean break. She was reclaiming her maiden name, taking only her personal effects and a small inheritance from her grandmother. She was also requesting a fair and structured child support agreement to be put into a trust for their son, managed by a neutral third party. There was no angry letter, no final dramatic confrontation, just the cold, clean paperwork of a life that was being surgically removed from his. He slumped against a stack of boxes, the papers trembling in his hand. The lack of emotion was the most damning indictment of all. It told him he was no longer even worth her anger. He was simply a chapter she had finished reading and was now closing forever. At its core, this was not just a story of revenge. It was a story of reclamation. Brooke Sterling didn't just get even. She got it all. She reclaimed her name, her career, her strength, and her future, transforming a moment of profound betrayal into the foundation for a life of purpose. It is a powerful reminder that our lowest moments do not have to define us. Sometimes, the demolition of the life we thought we wanted is the necessary first step to building the one we were always meant to have. True power is not about the applause you receive in a crowded room, but the quiet, unshakable worth you build inside yourself. If Brooke's journey from disillusionment to triumph has resonated with you, and if you believe in the power of resilience to turn injustice on its head, show your support by hitting like. Share this story with someone who might need a reminder of their own inner strength. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of karma, justice, and empowerment. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of inspiration. Thanks for listening. The Shadow of the Past, a game of power and redemption. The white carpet of rose petals, scattered across the impeccable lawn, seemed to tremble as the distant sound of helicopter blades sliced through the melody of the string quartet. 300 guests, dressed in their finest attire, turned from the flower-adorned altar toward the sound, shielding their eyes from the afternoon sun. Victor Ribeiro, heir to one of the country's largest pharmaceutical empires, stood paralyzed at the altar, the color draining from his face as he recognized the sleek black helicopter descending over his family's property. What is that? Who is it? His fiancée, Sophia Diniz, clutched his arm, her diamond bracelet digging into his skin, but Victor could not answer. The air had left his body when the helicopter door opened, and a woman in a smart white pantsuit emerged, her caramel-colored hair dancing in the wind from the slowing blades. Then, two small figures emerged behind her. Twins, a boy and a girl, no older than 6 years old, each holding one of her hands, as they walked confidently toward the wedding ceremony. Victor's mother gasped audibly. Anyone could see it. The children had Victor's eyes. The fall from paradise, 6 years. 6 years earlier, Victor Ribeiro and Elisa Nogueira were the definition of a power couple. He was the brilliant heir to Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals, she a biochemist whose research had already saved countless lives. Their wedding had been the social event of the season, with their vows exchanged in the same garden where Victor now stood with another woman. Their marriage seemed perfect, passionate, supportive, and built on mutual respect. They traveled the world together, donated millions to charity, and were preparing to start a family. However, behind the scenes, storms were forming. Julião, Victor's childhood friend, had joined Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals as CFO, bringing his sister, Sophia, into their social circle. What no one knew was how these two siblings would systematically destroy everything Victor and Elisa had built. The Ribeiro estate glowed under the late afternoon lights as staff in impeccable uniforms circulated through the annual charity gala. Victor watched his wife from across the crowded ballroom, admiring how Elisa commanded attention in her emerald dress as she discussed her latest research with the Minister of Health. 6 years of marriage had only deepened his attraction to her brilliant mind and kind heart. "She's an incredible woman," Julião said, appearing at Victor's side with 2 whiskeys. "You're a lucky man." Victor accepted the drink with a smile. "I know. The clinical trials for her cancer treatment protocol are showing incredible results. The board is thrilled." Julião nodded, his eyes following Elisa as she laughed at something Sophia had said. "Must be nice to have beauty and brains under the same roof." "We're trying to have a baby, you know," Victor confided, the whiskey dulling his usual reserve. "Elisa's been tracking everything. She says the timing is perfect this month." Julião's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Parenthood, huh? That'll change everything." Later that night, Elisa came out of her private bathroom to find Victor sitting on the edge of their bed, her phone in his hand. His face was unrecognizable, contorted with rage and betrayal. "Victor, what are you doing with my phone?" "Who is Miguel?" His voice was dangerously calm, Elisa's brow furrowed in confusion. "Miguel? I don't know any." "Don't lie to me." He threw the phone at her, showing her text messages she had never seen before. Intimate messages, explicit plans for rendezvous. "You've been seeing him for 3 months? In our bed, Elisa? While I was away on business?" "Victor, I've never seen these messages. I don't know any Miguel." Her hands shook as she scrolled through conversations that appeared to be from her number, but which contained words she had never written. "His cologne was on your clothes. He knew things about our house that only someone who had been here could know." Victor got up, running his hands through his dark hair. "Julião found him. The private investigator confirmed everything." "Julião?" Elisa's mind raced. "Victor, this is fake. Someone planted these messages. I never—" The bedroom door opened, and Julião walked in without knocking. "Security found this in her car." He handed Victor a small bag containing a man's watch and a hotel keycard. "I've never seen that," Elisa cried, trying to reach Victor, who pulled away as if her touch burned him. "Get out," Victor whispered, then louder. "Get out of my house." "Victor, please, I'm your wife. I love you." Tears streamed down her face as Julião signaled to the security guards waiting in the hallway. "Not anymore. I want divorce papers drafted tonight, Julião." "It's already been arranged," Julião replied, without looking at Elisa's desperate gaze. The next few moments passed in a horrible blur as security escorted Elisa out of the bedroom. She pleaded with Victor to listen, to think logically. "Why would I cheat on you when we were trying for a baby?" But rational thought had abandoned him, replaced by a primal rage fueled by what appeared to be irrefutable evidence. In 30 minutes, Elisa found herself standing in the entryway of her home in her nightgown, watching staff hastily throw packed bags into the trunk of her car. Victor watched from the balcony, his face a stone mask, while Julião stood beside him, a hand on his shoulder in apparent comfort. "Your key cards have been deactivated," the head of security informed her coldly. "Your accounts will be frozen in the morning. Mr. Ribeiro suggests that you do not attempt to contact him or anyone else at the company." The rain began to fall as Elisa got into her car, gasping through sobs. Her phone vibrated with a notification. "Access to your email revoked." Then another. "Your building access has been terminated." Then a third. A preliminary notice of divorce proceedings. 5 miles from the estate, she pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour pharmacy and sat there, trembling, under the fluorescent lights. This could not be happening. There had to be some explanation. Someone had set her up. But who? And why? Her mind immediately went to Julian's strange behavior over the last few months, the way he seemed to appear whenever she and Victor were at odds. The subtle suggestions that he might be working too hard or traveling too often. Then, a wave of nausea hit her, a familiar sensation from the last few mornings that she had attributed to stress. With shaking hands, she got out of the car, went into the pharmacy, and bought a pregnancy test. 3 minutes later, looking at the positive result in the sterile pharmacy bathroom, Elisa Nogueira's world completely crumbled. She was pregnant with Victor's child, homeless, and facing a vicious divorce orchestrated by someone she now suspected had been plotting this for months. At dawn, she parked near Victor's office building, determined to make him listen to her. But security intercepted her before she reached the door. "Mr. Ribeiro does not want to see you, Mrs. Ribeiro," the guard said, uncomfortable but firm. "Tell him I'm pregnant," she pleaded. "Please, just tell him that." The guard disappeared inside. 10 unbearable minutes later, he returned. "Mr. Ribeiro says that given your infidelity, he has no reason to believe the child is his. His lawyer will contact you for a paternity test after the birth." Elisa's legs gave out at the cruelty of it. Through the glass doors, she could see Julian watching from the lobby, his expression unreadable. That afternoon, she discovered that her credit cards had been canceled. By nightfall, her closest friends had stopped calling her back, all part of the same social circle as Victor. As night fell, she was sleeping in her car in a supermarket parking lot, 7 weeks pregnant and completely alone. She didn't know it yet, but the ultrasound she would have 2 weeks later would reveal an even bigger surprise. Twins. The Queen's rise. The first ray of hope came in the form of Helena Garcia, an elderly woman who found Elisa vomiting next to her car one early morning. "Either you're pregnant or you're dying, dear," Helena observed with surprising bluntness. "Either way, you need help." Helena, a widow who had lost her only daughter to cancer years earlier, offered Elisa her daughter's old room until she could sort things out. It was in Helena's modest home that Elisa finally found the space to think clearly about what had happened and to plan her response. She pawned her wedding ring for 12,000 euros, a fraction of its value, but enough for prenatal care and a used laptop. Then, she began to meticulously document everything that had occurred, creating timelines, saving the evidence she was able to retrieve. The picture that emerged confirmed her suspicions. Julian, with Sophia's help, had orchestrated her downfall. But why? What could they stand to gain? The answer came from an unexpected source. While looking for job openings at a cafe, Elisa overheard 2 pharmaceutical researchers discussing irregularities in Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals' recent drug trial reports. "The numbers don't add up," one whispered. "The side effect profiles were clearly altered before submission." "Julio signed off on everything," the other replied. "Victor probably didn't even see the original data." Elisa's scientific mind kicked into gear. She had been working on those same trials before she was cast out. If Julian was falsifying data, that wasn't just fraud. It was dangerous. People could die, and if she had stayed, she might have found out. That night, cradling her growing belly, Elisa made a decision. Victor had failed her completely, choosing blind rage over trust. But she would not allow Julian's schemes to hurt innocent people or to steal her children's future. "Your father didn't want us," she whispered to her unborn twins. "But that's okay. We're going to build something so spectacular that one day he'll realize exactly what he threw away. Morning sickness was a cruel name, Elisa discovered, as she vomited for the third time that afternoon. 4 months pregnant with twins, her body was changing rapidly, making it nearly impossible to hide her condition during job interviews. "I'm sorry, Dr. Noguera," the laboratory director said, without looking her in the eye. "Your qualifications are impressive, but we've already filled the position." It was the same response she had received at 5 other research facilities. Someone, almost certainly Julián, had blacklisted her across the entire industry. Helena found her crying on the porch swing that night. "Cheer up, dear," the old woman said, sitting beside Elisa. "The world doesn't end just because a man was too foolish to see your worth." "It's not just Victor," Elisa explained. "No one will hire me. My research background means nothing when Julián tells them I'm unstable or dishonest." Helena considered this. "Then perhaps you need to meet people who have never heard of Julián." The next day, Helena took Elisa to a small community clinic that served primarily low-income patients. The waiting room was packed, the staff overworked. "My friend, Dr. Rebecca Vidal, runs this place," Helena explained. "She doesn't care about pharmaceutical politics, only about helping people." Dr. Vidal was a human-shaped hurricane, a brilliant researcher who had left a prestigious position to serve those without access to proper medical care. After a 5-minute conversation about Elisa's research background, she offered her a part-time job analyzing patient data. "I can't pay you what you're worth, Dr. Noguera," Dr. Vidal warned. "And I see you're expecting twins." Elisa nodded. "I could tell by the way you're carrying yourself. Classic twin presentation," Dr. Vidal explained. "Look, it's not a glamorous job, but it's honest. And no one here is going to judge you for being pregnant and single, if that's what you're worried about." For the first time in months, Elisa felt a glimpse of hope. "When can I start?" The job was, in fact, unglamorous. Organizing patient records, analyzing treatment outcomes, and helping to optimize the clinic's protocols. But it kept Elisa's mind sharp, and it provided enough income to supplement what she had gotten from her wedding ring. At 7 months pregnant, she staggered into Dr. Vidal's office with a discovery she couldn't ignore. "There's a pattern in these cancer patients," Elisa explained, spreading charts across the desk. "Those taking the new Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals drug are showing hepatic complications at triple the reported rate." Dr. Vidal studied the data. "This is concerning. Are you sure?" "The sample size is small, but the pattern is unmistakable," Elisa confirmed, "and it tracks with what I overheard about falsified trial data." Dr. Vidal's expression darkened. "We should report this to the European Medicines Agency, the EMPSA." "On what evidence?" Elisa sighed. "They'll say our data set is too limited. We need more proof." "What we need," Dr. Vidal said thoughtfully, "is to develop an alternative treatment, something safer." Elisa blinked. "That would take years and millions in funding." "Not necessarily." Dr. Vidal smiled mysteriously. "I happen to have a fully equipped laboratory at my home. It's where I conduct my own research after hours. Maybe it's time you saw it." Dr. Vidal's home laboratory turned out to be a state-of-the-art facility, built in what had once been a large barn on her property. "My late husband left me quite comfortable," Dr. Vidal explained. "I use my inheritance to fund research that big companies won't touch. Treatments for rare diseases, affordable alternatives to expensive drugs." Elisa ran her hand over the gleaming equipment. "This is incredible." "It's also private," Dr. Vidal emphasized. "No corporate oversight, no shareholders demanding quarterly profits at the expense of safety. Just pure science." She fixed Elisa with an intense look. Your previous work on cancer treatment protocols was groundbreaking. What would you do if you had the freedom to continue that research your way? The question awakened something in Elisa that had been dormant since her casting out. The passionate researcher who had once believed she could change the world. 2 weeks later, Leo and Luna Ribeiro came into the world at Dr. Vidal's clinic. Healthy, perfect, and blissfully unaware of the chaos surrounding their birth. No birth announcement appeared in the newspapers. No proud father paced the lobby. Just Helena, wiping away happy tears as she held the newborns. And Dr. Vidal, who had delivered them herself. "They have your eyes," Helena observed softly. "Yes," Elisa nodded, studying her son's serious expression and her daughter's curious gaze. "But I hope my common sense." The recovery from childbirth was complicated by emotional exhaustion, but Elisa allowed herself only 2 weeks before returning to Dr. Vidal's laboratory, often with the twins sleeping nearby in a portable bassinet. Days became weeks, weeks became months, as Elisa perfected her research, focusing on developing a cancer treatment with significantly fewer side effects than Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals' leading drug. When the twins were 8 months old, the breakthrough arrived. Elisa had created a compound that showed remarkable efficacy against aggressive cancers while maintaining a benign side effect profile. Dr. Vidal was euphoric. "This is extraordinary," she declared, reviewing the lab results. "You need to patent this immediately." "Patents require money," Elisa reminded her, "and lawyers." "Which I have," Dr. Vidal replied. "But more importantly, this discovery deserves to reach patients. It needs a company to get behind it." Elisa laughed bitterly. "What company would work with the discarded wife of Victor Ribeiro?" Dr. Vidal gave her a long, measured look. "A new one," she said. "One that you start yourself." The idea seemed preposterous at first. Elisa had no business experience, no industry contacts, and barely enough money to pay for the twins' diapers. But Dr. Vidal was persistent, finally revealing that she had been discreetly investing in biotech startups for years. "I am prepared to provide seed funding," she told her. "My only conditions are that you maintain full control and that the drugs we develop remain affordable." "Why would you do this for me?" Elisa asked, suspicious of such generosity after months of betrayal. "Because 20 years ago I was you," Dr. Vidal replied simply. "Brilliant, betrayed, and underestimated. The man who did it to me went on to become a pharmaceutical giant, selling drugs for 20 times their production cost. I have spent 2 decades looking for someone who could help me change that system." She smiled at the twins, who were playing on a blanket nearby. "Consider it my investment in the next generation." Phoenix Pharmaceuticals was born in Dr. Vidal's barn laboratory, with Elisa using her maiden name, Elisa Noguera, to avoid an immediate association with Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals. Her first patent application went through without a hitch. Julio and Victor remained completely unaware that their former colleague was building a rival company. By the time the twins turned 2, Phoenix had secured EMPA's approval for its first drug and had begun small-scale production. Dr. Vidal's industry contacts proved invaluable, opening doors that would have remained firmly shut to Elisa alone. Their first major contract came from the La Misericordia hospital network, which had been struggling with the high cost and worrisome side effects of Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals' cancer treatments. Phoenix offered an effective alternative at half the price, with significantly better patient outcomes. The announcement caused small waves in industry publications. Newcomer Phoenix Pharmaceuticals, led by scientist Elisa Noguera, secures multi-million-dollar contract with La Misericordia hospital network, challenging established players in the oncology drug market. At Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals, the news received little attention, A new competitor was not unusual in their industry, and the company name raised no red flags. It was only when their largest hospital client announced they were switching suppliers that alarms began to sound. Julien burst into Victor's office, throwing a report on his desk. "We just lost Metropolitan Hospital to a startup called Phoenix. That's 30 million euros in lost annual revenue." Victor, now more involved in the social aspects of the business than the scientific work that had once impassioned him, barely looked up. "Then offer them a better deal." "I did," Julien exclaimed. "They refused. They said the Phoenix drug has superior outcomes and fewer side effects. Their exact words were, 'Ribeiro's product doesn't compare.'" This finally caught Victor's attention. "That's impossible. Our R&D team has been working on that formulation for years." "Well, apparently, this Elisa Nogueira person figured out in 2 years what our team couldn't in 5. Julien's tone was carefully calibrated to suggest incompetence rather than his own sabotage of Ribeiro's research after Elisa's departure. "Elisa Nogueira?" Victor frowned, the name stirring something in his memory. "No one knows much about her," Julien continued smoothly. "She sort of appeared out of nowhere about 3 years ago. Very private, never gives interviews, but her science is apparently exceptional. I want to meet her," Victor decided. "Arrange a dinner. Perhaps we should consider acquiring Phoenix rather than competing with it." Julien's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'll try, but my sources say she turns down most meeting requests, especially from larger pharmaceutical companies." "Everyone has their price," Victor replied dismissively, turning back to the social calendar on his desk, where Sophia had scheduled several charity galas they would attend together. Meanwhile, across town, Elisa was sitting in Phoenix's modest but growing headquarters, reviewing their latest financial projections, while the twins calmly colored in the small play area of her office. "Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals lost another contract today," her assistant mentioned, placing new reports on her desk. "Their stock is down 8%. Elisa allowed herself a small smile. "That's a shame for them." "This too," the assistant added, sliding a business magazine over. On the cover was Victor, with Sophia on his arm at a charity event. The title read, "Ribeiro heir to wed Sophia Denise in spring ceremony." Elisa's expression remained neutral as she studied the image of the man who had thrown her out of their home. The man whose children were now calmly drawing a few feet away. Children he had never bothered to confirm were his, despite his initial request for a paternity test. "Mommy, look!" Luna held up a drawing of what appeared to be their small family. Elisa, Leo, Luna, Helena, and Dr. Vidal, all holding hands. "It's us!" "That's beautiful, darling," Elisa replied, her voice firm despite the emotions bubbling beneath. Later that night, after putting the twins to bed, Elisa sat on her balcony overlooking the city. In the distance, she could see the Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals tower lit against the night sky. 3 years of strategic work had transformed Phoenix into a formidable competitor, one that was beginning to seriously impact Ribeiro's bottom line. But that had never been her primary goal. Her phone buzzed with a message from her investigator, an old patient whose life had been saved by Phoenix's drug, and who now used his skills as a financial analyst to track Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals' activities. "I've found something significant in their quarterly reports, hidden inconsistencies that suggest at least 80 million euros unaccounted for. I need to dig deeper. Wedding date also confirmed. May 15th. May 15th. The exact date. 6 years prior, when security had escorted her out of her home. Elisa closed her eyes. The timing could not be a coincidence. Julien and Sophia had a flair for psychological cruelty, Choosing that specific date was clearly meant to completely erase her existence from Victor's life. But they had miscalculated gravely, because while they planned a wedding, Elisa had been building an empire, and more importantly, she had been gathering evidence of financial fraud, of deliberately concealed drug side effects, and of the elaborate plot to frame her for infidelity. The twins deserved to know their father, Dr. Vidal had told her repeatedly, and Victor deserves to know what Julian did. Elisa had resisted for years, protecting the peaceful world she had created for her children. But seeing the wedding announcement, planned for the anniversary of her greatest humiliation, something crystallized within her. The time for the truth to come out. All of it. Elisa's revenge and the villain's fall. The Ribeiro estate had never looked so magnificent. Thousands of white roses adorned the garden, where 300 guests had gathered to witness the union of Victor Ribeiro and Sofia Denise. String musicians played softly as guests took their seats, their murmured conversations creating a gentle hum of anticipation. Victor stood at the altar, handsome in his custom tuxedo, although close observers might have noted the slight emptiness in his eyes. In the front row, his parents exchanged worried glances. They had never fully warmed to Sofia, although they had kept their reservations private. Julian, serving as the best man, watched the scene with ill-disguised satisfaction. Everything had gone according to plan. A few months after Elisa's departure, he had introduced his sister Sofia to Victor. Her calculated affection had been the perfect distraction from Victor's occasional questions about the evidence against Elisa. Meanwhile, Julian had systematically siphoned off company funds, set up offshore accounts, and positioned himself to eventually take full control of Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals. The wedding officiant took his position. The music changed to the wedding march. Sofia appeared at the end of the aisle in a designer dress that had cost more than most houses. And then, the distant sound of helicopter blades. At first, the guests assumed it was part of the celebration, perhaps an elaborate entrance or a surprise planned by the groom. But Victor's look of confusion quickly turned to alarm as the black helicopter descended toward the estate's heliport. "What's going on?" Sofia demanded, reaching the altar as guests began to turn toward the noise. Victor didn't answer. Something about the helicopter felt strangely familiar. The ceremony stopped as the helicopter landed. Security personnel moved uncertainly toward the heliport, unsure whether to intervene, as no one had authorized them to stop the aircraft. Then the door opened, and she stepped out. Even from a distance, Victor recognized her immediately. The world seemed to shrink to a single point as Elisa, his ex-wife, the woman he had cast aside 6 years ago, walked calmly toward the ceremony in a smart navy blue pantsuit that emphasized how little she had changed. Her hair was different, her posture more confident, but her face stirred something deep in him that he had desperately tried to forget. Then, 2 small figures emerged from the helicopter behind her, a boy and a girl, holding hands, looking around with curious expressions that mirrored Victor's when he was confronted with something new. "My God," Victor's mother whispered, rising from her seat. "Ricardo, look at them." Victor's father also stood, his face pale with shock. "They have your eyes. Victor's eyes." Murmurs spread through the crowd as Elisa and the children walked purposefully toward the ceremony. Security looked to Victor for instructions, but he remained frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. "What is this?" Sofia whispered, gripping Victor's arm. "Who is this woman? Why is she here with these children?" Julian took a step forward, his face contorted with rage and fear. "I'll handle this." He signaled to security, but Elisa's calm voice cut through the chaos. "I wouldn't do that, Julian, unless you want your financial activities made public now rather than in tomorrow's newspapers." Julian hesitated as Elisa and the children reached the edge of the seating area. The twins, immaculately dressed and remarkably poised for their age, stood close to their mother, studying the scene with intelligent eyes. "Victor," Elisa said, her voice echoing in the now silent gathering. "Meet your children, Leo and Luna, the ones you never knew existed when you threw me out 6 years ago." The collective gasp from the guests was audible. Victor's mother put a hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes, as she looked at her grandchildren for the first time. "That's impossible," Sophia exclaimed. "She's lying, Victor. Tell everyone she's lying." But Victor couldn't speak. He was looking at the children, at the boy whose serious expression and thoughtful eyes were eerily familiar, at the girl whose determined posture mirrored his own in childhood photographs. "The DNA evidence confirming their paternity has already been submitted to the family court," Elisa continued calmly, "along with evidence of how Julian and Sophia conspired to take me out of your life by fabricating evidence of infidelity." Julian stepped forward. "Security, get this woman out of here immediately." "I wouldn't do that," said another voice, as Dr. Rebecca Vidal emerged from behind Elisa. "Unless Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals wants the EMPSA to receive our full file on the falsified retinol side effect profiles tonight instead of next week." The crowd erupted in confused chatter. Victor's parents pushed past security to get closer to the children, his mother kneeling despite her expensive dress to look the twins in the eye. "Hello," she said softly. I would be your grandmother." Luna, always the bolder twin, studied the older woman carefully before replying. "You look like the pictures Mommy keeps in our memory box." This simple statement, which revealed that Elisa had ensured the children knew their paternal family despite everything, seemed to break something in Victor's mother. She began to cry openly, reaching out a hesitant hand that Luna accepted with surprising grace. Victor finally found his voice. "Elisa, how? When?" "I was 7 weeks pregnant when you threw me out," she replied, maintaining her measured tone despite the emotion simmering beneath the surface. "I tried to tell you. Your security guards delivered the message. You said you wanted a paternity test after the birth, but no one ever contacted me." Victor turned to Julian, a crushing horror and confusion on his face. "What are you talking about? I never received any message about a pregnancy." Julian's expression hardened. "She's lying. This is obviously an elaborate plot to..." "To what, Julian?" Elisa interrupted. "To interrupt the wedding you specifically scheduled for the anniversary of my being cast out. To reveal that you and Sophia have siphoned over 80 million euros from Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals? Or perhaps to inform Victor that I am the Elisa Nogueira he's been trying to meet, the founder of Phoenix Pharmaceuticals, which has been consistently taking your market share for the past 3 years?" The revelations fell like physical blows. Victor recoiled, looking from Julian to Sophia, then back to Elisa and the children, his children, standing calmly in the midst of the chaos they had started. "This is absurd," Sophia declared, though her voice trembled slightly. "Victor, she's clearly deranged. We need to get her out of here." "Actually," a new voice said from the back of the gathering, "I think the person we're getting out of here is Ms. Denise." 2 individuals in dark suits approached, flashing federal badges. "Criminal Investigation Unit, Financial Crimes. We have questions about certain financial transactions between Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals and offshore accounts in your name, ma'am." As the federal agents escorted a protesting Julian and Sophia away from the ceremony, the wedding guests began to disperse in confused and scandalized groups. Some stayed in the distance, reluctant to miss the dramatic conclusion of what was supposed to be a simple social wedding. Victor approached Elisa and the children slowly, as if in a trance. He knelt before the twins, studying their faces with awe and devastation. "Hello," he said simply, his voice hoarse with emotion. Leo, always the more cautious twin, hid partially behind his mother's leg, but Luna looked directly at her father. You look like your pictures too, she informed him matter-of-factly. But Mommy's are from when you were happier. Victor's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I didn't know about you. I would have... His voice trailed off as the enormity of what he had lost washed over him. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Elisa suggested, glancing at the remaining onlookers. Your parents are welcome to join us. Victor nodded numbly. Then he turned to find his mother and father, already standing nearby, unable to take their eyes off their grandchildren. The helicopter is waiting, Elisa added, unless they'd prefer to stay and explain to your guests why there won't be a wedding today. As they walked towards the heliport, Victor found himself at Elisa's side, with the twins a little ahead of them, with his parents in fascinated tow. Why now? He asked in a low voice. After 6 years, why did you choose this moment? Elisa's expression remained carefully neutral. Because the twins deserve to know their father, because your parents deserve to know their grandchildren, and because Julio and Sophia were about to complete their takeover of your company, leaving you penniless and potentially implicated in their crimes. She paused. The timing of the wedding date, the anniversary of when you cast me out, simply provided a certain poetic symmetry. In the helicopter, as they flew toward Elisa's home, Victor watched his children point excitedly at landmarks below. They were bright, articulate, and obviously well-raised. The life Elisa had built without him suddenly seemed to materialize in his mind. The birthdays he had missed, the first steps, the first words, the bedtime stories, and the early morning breakfasts. 6 years of memories he would never get back. Where are we going? Victor asked in a low voice. To my home, Elisa replied. There are documents you need to see, evidence of what Julio and Sophia have been doing with your company. She hesitated. And things the children want to show you. The helicopter landed on the rooftop helipad of a sleek building with the Phoenix Pharmaceuticals logo. As they descended into a penthouse apartment, Victor realized with growing astonishment the magnitude of Elisa's success. This wasn't just a company. It was an empire built from nothing in 6 short years. Inside the spacious and welcoming penthouse, the twins immediately ran to a bookshelf that displayed their artwork and school accomplishments. We want to show you our room, Luna announced, grabbing Victor's hand with the ease of a child who had never known rejection. Leo followed more hesitantly, carefully watching his father's reactions. As Victor was guided through the home Elisa had created, each detail revealed another facet of the life that had gone on without him. Family photographs from vacations and birthdays, evidence of the twins' distinct personalities in their carefully decorated room, shelves filled with well-read storybooks. In the twins' room, a space divided to reflect their different interests, Luna's half filled with astronomy decorations and science projects, Leo's with books and intricate building games. Victor noticed a small box on a shelf labeled Dad. Can I show him, Mommy? Luna asked when Elisa appeared at the doorway. With Elisa's nod, Luna retrieved the box and opened it to reveal newspaper clippings, photographs, and even Victor and Elisa's wedding announcement from years ago. Mommy made this so we'd know about you, Luna explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She said you were very smart, and that's why we're smart too. Victor looked at Elisa in disbelief. Despite everything he had done or failed to do, she had ensured that their children knew him, at least to some extent. I'll give you some time with them, Elisa said in a low voice. When you're ready, we need to talk about Julio's activities. Your parents are in the living room, rebuilding trust and forging a future. In the elegantly furnished living room, Victor's parents sat uncomfortably on a sofa, still stunned by the day's revelations. Victor's father, Ricardo Ribeiro, a formidable businessman in his own right, looked completely lost as he accepted a cup of tea from Elisa. "How did we not know?" he asked, his voice thick with regret. "Our own grandchildren." Julien was very thorough, Elisa replied without bitterness. He intercepted communications, falsified documents, and ensured that Victor only received the information he wanted him to. "But why?" Victor's mother asked. "What did he have to gain?" Elisa opened a laptop on the coffee table. "Control of Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals. He and Sofia have been systematically siphoning off funds, while at the same time setting Victor up to take the fall for covering up dangerous side effects of your drugs." She turned the screen to show them complex financial records. As soon as they were married, Sofia would have had access to Victor's personal accounts and properties. They planned to complete the asset transfer a few months after the wedding. Ricardo Ribeiro studied the documents with growing horror. "These are board-level financial reports. How did you get them?" "I have sources within Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals," Elisa acknowledged. "People who remained loyal to the company's original mission, rather than Julian's vision." Victor entered the room, visibly moved from his time with the children. "They're incredible," he said simply, looking at Elisa with new eyes. "How did you do that? Raise them and build a company from nothing too?" "I had help," Elisa replied. "Dr. Vidal, for one, and an old woman named Helena, who took me in when I was homeless and pregnant." "Homeless?" Victor's mother repeated, horrified. "Yes," Elisa confirmed, her tone clinical rather than accusatory. "When Victor ordered me removed from our home, my accounts were frozen, my credit cards canceled, and my reputation destroyed. I slept in my car for 2 weeks before Helena found me vomiting in a parking lot from morning sickness." The raw reality of what Elisa had endured hit Victor like a physical blow. "I never knew," he whispered. "Julien told me you had moved in with your lover." "There was no lover, Victor," Elisa said quietly. "There was just me, 7 weeks pregnant with your children, trying to survive, while Julien was sick with a need to destroy everything we had built together." Victor sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The evidence had seemed so conclusive. The text messages, the watch, even the witnesses. "All fabricated," Elisa confirmed. "Julien hired someone to create fake text messages. The watch and hotel key were planted. The witnesses were paid." She opened another file on her laptop. "This is the payment record from Julien's private account to the man who pretended to be my imaginary lover." And it continued, turning to another document. "This is the restraining order you supposedly filed, which prevented me from approaching you to talk about my pregnancy." Victor looked at the document with horror. "I never filed this. I never—" "Julien forged your signature," Elisa explained, "just as he did on countless company documents, authorizing the release of drugs despite concerning test results." As the full magnitude of Julien and Sofia's betrayal became apparent, Victor seemed to physically age before their eyes. His parents looked equally devastated, particularly his mother, who kept glancing down the hallway where laughter could occasionally be heard from the twins' room. "Why didn't you expose them sooner?" Ricardo finally asked. "With such exhaustive proof, you could have cleared your name years ago." Elisa considered her answer carefully. "In the beginning, my only concern was surviving. Then, protecting the twins became paramount. By the time Phoenix was established enough for me to consider a confrontation, I had to weigh the impact on innocent Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals employees and patients." She looked at Victor directly. "Despite everything, I never wanted to destroy the company or hurt those who depended on it." Victor looked at her with a new understanding. "So instead, you built a competing company with better products and ethical practices, gradually shifting patients to safer drugs, while you gathered evidence against Julien." "Yes," Elisa acknowledged. "Phoenix wasn't just built out of revenge, Victor. It was built because I saw how Julian was corrupting your company's mission. The mission we once shared to help people. A gentle knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Dr. Vidal came in, carrying a tablet. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you should see this. The news of Julião and Sophia's arrest has gone public, and the Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals Board of Directors has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. Victor paled. The company will collapse? Not necessarily, Elisa replied. I've prepared a proposal for their consideration. She pulled a folder from her desk and handed it to Victor. A merger between Phoenix and Ribeiro. It would stabilize things if it were presented quickly. Your parents have copies. Perhaps they could go with you while I handle the twins' morning routine. The simple domestic reference, the morning routine she had managed alone for 6 years, hung between them, highlighting everything Victor had lost due to his rushed judgment and misplaced trust. Thank you, he said finally, for the proposal, for dinner, for everything. He hesitated. Would it be appropriate for me to say goodnight to the twins? Elisa nodded. They're probably still awake. Luna rarely falls asleep before she's extracted at least 3 bedtime stories. A trace of a smile crossed Victor's face. She's persistent, like her mother. Yes, Elisa nodded, leading him toward the children's room. Although her negotiation tactics come entirely from your side of the family. The Phoenix rises. The Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals conference room hummed with tension as the board members gathered for the emergency meeting. News of Julião and Sophia's arrests had spread quickly through financial circles, and the company's stock trading had been suspended pending the investigation. Victor sat at the head of the table, his father beside him, both men looking exhausted, but resolute. The board members, many of them longtime family friends, looked shocked by the revelations about Julián's activities. The situation is serious, but it is not unrecoverable, Victor began, his voice firm despite his inner turmoil. With your permission, I would like to present a path forward proposed by... For the next hour, Victor described the merger proposal Elisa had prepared. The board listened with growing interest as he explained how combining Phoenix's groundbreaking research with Ribeiro's established infrastructure could preserve jobs, maintain patient access to drugs, and position the combined entity as an industry leader. This Ms. Elisa Nogueira, one board member said with skepticism. She is willing to merge her successful company with ours during a crisis of this magnitude? What is her motivation? Victor and his father exchanged glances. There is something else you need to know, Victor admitted. Elisa Nogueira is Elisa Ribeiro, my ex-wife. The murmurs of astonishment around the table mirrored the explosive nature of this revelation. The woman Julián claimed was unfaithful, a senior board member clarified. The one who disappeared 6 years ago? Yes, Victor confirmed. Julián fabricated evidence against her to hide his own financial crimes. She was innocent of all charges. And now she is our main competitor? Another asked in disbelief. She is, Victor acknowledged. She is also the mother of my 6-year-old twins, whom I met for the first time yesterday. The stunned silence that followed was finally broken by the board's oldest member, Margarita Chen. It is not something one simply gets over. Victor considered her question seriously. I've started therapy, he admitted. Something I should have done years ago, after my brother's death. Julião exploited my grief and insecurities masterfully. He looked at her. I am not the same man who cast her out, Elisa. I cannot change what I did, but I can ensure I do not make that kind of mistake again. Elisa nodded, accepting his answer without comment. The merger announcement caught headlines in business publications. Phoenix and Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals announce historic merger. CEO Elisa Nogueira, revealed as ex-wife of Victor Ribeiro, in surprising corporate and personal reconciliation. The personal aspect of the story, The wronged wife returning triumphantly with hidden children and a superior company captured the public's imagination. Interview requests poured in, which Elisa politely but firmly refused. "This is not a tabloid drama," she told her public relations team. "This is a business merger with personal elements that are not for public consumption." As the weeks passed, Victor's relationship with the twins gradually deepened. Leo began to lower his guard, especially after discovering his father's extensive library and their shared interest in geology. Luna simply adopted Victor as if he had always been there, naturally incorporating him into her expansive view of the world. The twins' upcoming 7th birthday became a focal point. Victor, eager to make the occasion memorable, repeatedly consulted Elisa about appropriate gifts and arrangements. "Nothing extravagant," she warned. "They don't need to be showered with expensive presents to make up for lost time." "I know," Victor assured her, "but I'd like to contribute something meaningful to the space theme Luna requested." On the day before the birthday celebration, Victor showed up at Elisa's penthouse with Dr. Vidal, who had become an unexpected ally in helping him navigate his new relationship with his children. "We have a proposal," Dr. Vidal announced for the birthday party. Elisa raised an eyebrow. "I thought everything was arranged. Helena's making the cake, the decorations are ready, and the planetarium visit is set for tomorrow morning." "This would be an addition," Victor explained. "With your approval, of course." He described his idea. A professional observatory had agreed to a private nighttime viewing session after the planetarium visit. The twins and their friends would have access to powerful telescopes on an unusually clear night when several planets would be visible. "That's truly perfect," Elisa acknowledged. "Luna will be euphoric." "And for Leo," Victor continued with more hesitation, "I arranged for a geologist from the Natural History Museum to bring several rare specimens for him to examine, including," he added with a small smile, "a fragment of the meteorite that created the Chicxulub crater." Elisa looked at him with new appreciation. "You've been paying attention to their interests." "Of course," Victor replied simply. "They're extraordinary children. Getting to know them has been the greatest privilege of my life." The birthday celebration went off without a hitch. The twins, surrounded by school friends and both sides of their unconventional family, blossomed under the attention. Helena and Victor's mother had formed an unexpected alliance, coordinating decorations and food with military precision. Ricardo, Victor's father, initially awkward with the children, had found his niche helping Leo organize his growing rock collection. At the observatory that night, after the other children had been picked up by their parents, the core family group remained. Luna moved from telescope to telescope with boundless enthusiasm, while Leo carefully logged his observations in a notebook Victor had given him. While the children were occupied with Dr. Vidal and the elder Riberos, Victor found himself standing next to Elisa at the observatory's railing, looking out over the city lights. "Thank you," he said in a low voice, "for letting me be a part of today." Elisa nodded, her expression softening in the faint light. "You did well. The observatory was the perfect gift." "I meant what I said earlier," Victor continued carefully. "Getting to know them, even with all the years I lost, is the greatest gift I could have received." Elisa turned to him, studying him. The man she had once loved so completely, now a different person molded by loss and revelation. "You've changed," she observed. "I had to," Victor replied simply. "The man I was 6 years ago lost everything that mattered because he couldn't see what he had in front of him." "Not everything," Elisa corrected, looking at the twins. "They are still yours, in the ways that matter most." "Thanks to you," Victor acknowledged, "because despite everything, you made sure they knew who I was." A comfortable silence settled between them, not the intimacy of their old relationship, but something new, a shared appreciation for the extraordinary children they had raised, and the complex path that had brought them to this moment. "Mommy, Daddy," Luna called out excitedly. The parental designations now came naturally to her. "They found Saturn's rings. Come see." As they moved to join their children, Victor paused. "Elisa, I know we can never be what we were, and I've accepted that. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for this second chance to be in their lives, and in ours, even if it's just as co-parents and business partners." Elisa considered his words carefully. "Life rarely gives us what we expect, Victor. Sometimes it takes away what we thought we couldn't live without, only to replace it with something we never imagined was possible." As the twins called them back excitedly, she added, "Let's just focus on giving them the stable, loving family they deserve, whatever form that takes. The legacy of truth." A year after the dramatic wedding interruption, the twins' 8th birthday arrived with considerably less drama, but a lot more joy. The Phoenix Ribeiro Pharmaceuticals had not only survived the merger, but had thrived. Combining Elisa's innovative research approaches with Ribeiro's established infrastructure, the company had become an industry leader in ethical practices, transparent testing, and affordable drug pricing. The birthday celebration was held at Victor's new home, a comfortable but not ostentatious house with a sprawling backyard, perfect for the dinosaur-themed party Leo had requested. His interest had shifted from rocks to paleontology in the last few months. Elisa arrived early to help with preparations, bringing Helena and Dr. Vidal, who had become regular fixtures in the twins' extended family circle. Victor's parents were already there, Ricardo carefully assembling a realistic-looking volcano that would safely erupt during the party, while his wife arranged prehistoric-looking plants around the garden. "It all looks incredible," Elisa commented, surveying the transformed backyard. "The kids are going to love it." "I hope so," Victor replied, emerging from the house with trays of fossil-shaped cookies. Leo was very specific about scientific accuracy. "He gets that from both of us," Elisa observed with a smile. Their relationship had evolved over the last year into a comfortable co-parenting arrangement. The initial tension had gradually given way to mutual respect as they navigated both their corporate merger and their shared responsibility for the twins. The children had adapted to their new family structure with remarkable resilience. They now spent 3 nights a week at Victor's house and the rest of the time at Elisa's penthouse. Far from being confused by the arrangement, they seemed to thrive, having both parents actively involved in their lives. As the guests began to arrive, school friends, colleagues from both companies, and the unconventional extended family they had assembled, Elisa found herself watching Victor interact with the children. His transformation over the last year had been remarkable. The ambitious, sometimes arrogant pharmaceutical heir had been replaced by a thoughtful, patient father who prioritized his children above all else. "He's done well, hasn't he?" Dr. Vidal observed, joining Elisa at the edge of the garden. "Better than I expected, to be honest." "Yes," Elisa nodded. "The twins adore him." "And you?" Dr. Vidal asked softly. "How do you feel about all this? It can't be easy watching him integrate so seamlessly into the life you built without him." Elisa considered the question. "Actually, it's been easier than I anticipated. Victor isn't trying to take over or change what's already working. He's simply adding himself to the equation in ways that benefit the children." "And in ways that benefit you?" Dr. Vidal pressed gently. "Having a co-parent after 6 years of doing everything alone must be a relief." "It is," Elisa acknowledged, "though I sometimes feel guilty about it. After everything that happened, should I let him make my life easier?" Dr. Vidal smiled knowingly. "Forgiveness isn't just about him, Elisa. It's about you freeing yourself from the weight of the past." Before Elisa could reply, another guest arrived. David Vidal, Dr. Vidal's son, carrying an elaborately wrapped present. Over the last year, David had become a frequent visitor at family gatherings. As a pediatric surgeon, who had initially treated Leo for a minor sports injury, he had formed a natural bond with both children. "I'm sorry I'm late," he apologized, greeting Elisa with a warm smile. "An emergency surgery ran long." "You're just in time," Elisa assured him. "The volcano eruption isn't scheduled for another 30 minutes. As David moved to greet the twins, who welcomed him with evident affection, Dr. Vidal gave Elisa a meaningful look. "He canceled a conference in Porto to be here today," she mentioned casually. "He said the twins' birthday was more important." Elisa felt a flush of warmth at this information. Her friendship with David had developed gradually, but neither of them had taken steps to define it as anything more. "He's good with them," Elisa observed neutrally, though her expression softened as she watched David help Leo adjust his paleontologist costume. The party went off perfectly. With the volcano eruption as the dramatic highlight, Leo and Luna, surrounded by school friends and their unconventional extended family, radiated happiness as they blew out the candles on their dinosaur cake. As the celebration began to wind down, Victor approached Elisa with 2 glasses of champagne. "A toast," he suggested, "to our extraordinary children." Elisa accepted the glass. "To Leo and Luna, may they always be this happy." They drank in silent understanding, watching as the twins excitedly showed their friends the real fossil specimens Victor had obtained from the museum. "I wanted to tell you," Victor said after a moment. "The investigation into Julião and Sophia's activities has finally wrapped up. Their sentencing is next month." Elisa nodded. The legal proceedings had been extensive, uncovering even more widespread fraud than was initially suspected. "Did they give any explanation for why they did it? Why they specifically targeted you?" Victor's expression hardened slightly. "Julião eventually admitted that he realized you were close to discovering irregularities in the research data," Victor explained. "He knew your scientific rigor would eventually expose the shortcuts he was taking. Getting you out of the way was an act of self-preservation." "And Sophia?" Victor's expression hardened. "Apparently she always resented our relationship. She saw Julião's plot as an opportunity to get what she had wanted since university, wealth and status as a Ribeiro." Elisa absorbed this information thoughtfully. "It's strange to think how differently everything could have been if you had just listened to me that night." "I know," Victor acknowledged, with clear regret in his voice. "Not a day goes by that I don't think about it. If I could change one single moment in my life, it would be that one." "And yet," Elisa reflected, watching the joyful chaos of her children's birthday party, "would we want to change it? Phoenix wouldn't exist. Your parents wouldn't have Helena to terrify them with her brutally honest opinions." She smiled slightly. "Dr. Vidal and I wouldn't have revolutionized cancer treatment protocols." "A silver lining to my catastrophic mistake," Victor suggested, with a self-deprecating smile. "Perhaps," Elisa admitted, although the cost was tremendous. Their conversation was interrupted by David, who approached with an apologetic expression. "Sorry to interrupt, but Leo insists that only a doctor can properly examine his new fossil collection for scientific accuracy. Apparently, my credentials as a surgeon qualify me for this honor." Victor laughed. "You'd better not keep him waiting. He takes his fossils very seriously." As David walked away, Victor looked between him and Elisa with knowing eyes. "He's a good man," he observed neutrally. "Yes," Elisa nodded simply. "The twins are comfortable with him," Victor continued carefully. "They mentioned he sometimes takes them on Saturday outings." "He does," Elisa confirmed. "He's been a good friend." Victor studied her expression. "Just a friend?" Elisa looked at him directly. "We're taking things very slowly. The children are my priority. As they should be, Victor nodded. But Elisa, if he makes you happy, don't let the past, our past, get in the way. The simple sincerity of his statement touched Elisa unexpectedly. This was another testament to how much Victor had changed, the ability to genuinely wish for her happiness, even with someone else. Later that night, after the last guests had gone home and the twins were sleeping in their rooms at Victor's house, the adults gathered in the backyard. Helena and the elder Ribeiros were deep in an animated debate about educational approaches, while Dr. Vidal shared stories of her early research days. David sat next to Elisa, their hands occasionally brushing in a way that suggested a growing intimacy. Victor, noticing this, smiled to himself before turning his attention back to the conversation. As midnight approached, Helena announced that it was time for them to leave, which prompted a general movement. To end the night, the twins would stay with Victor until the next morning, according to their established routine. "I'll walk you out," David offered, as Elisa gathered her belongings. At the front door, away from the others, he hesitated. "I wanted to ask you something." Eliza looked at him expectantly. "There's a medical conference in Vienna next month," he explained. 3 days. I was thinking, maybe you would consider coming with me. We could extend it to a week, see the city." The invitation hung between them, not just an offer of travel, but a step toward a clearer definition of their relationship. "I'd need to check with Victor about the twins," Elisa began cautiously. "I already did," David admitted with a shy smile. "He assured me he could adjust his schedule to have them that week. Dr. Vidal also offered to help." Elisa raised an eyebrow. "You've been planning this." "I've been waiting," David corrected softly. "I know how important the twins are to you. I wouldn't suggest anything that would complicate their lives." The thoughtfulness behind his consideration, not just for her, but for the entire complex family she had built, touched Elisa deeply. "Vienna sounds wonderful," she said finally, allowing herself to accept the possibility of a personal happiness that had nothing to do with revenge or redemption. The next morning, Victor prepared breakfast as the twins energetically recounted their favorite parts of the party. Eliza arrived to pick them up, accompanied by David, who had offered to drive them to their weekend science club. As the adults supervised the breakfast cleanup, an unexpected moment of harmony settled in the kitchen. Victor and David discussing the twins' educational interests, Elisa organizing the week's schedule, everyone operating with the comfortable rhythm of people who had found a way to put the children's needs above all else. When the twins ran off to get their science projects, Victor took the opportunity to speak with Elisa privately. "I wanted to thank you," he said in a low voice. "For what?" Elisa asked, genuinely confused. "For allowing me to be a part of their lives," Victor explained. "For not letting bitterness consume you, when you had every right to." Elisa considered his words carefully. "Do you know what the real secret was? What ultimately ruined you?" Victor waited. "It wasn't the twins," she continued. "It wasn't Phoenix Pharmaceuticals or the exposure of Julian's schemes. It was showing you that redemption was possible, but that forgiveness had to be earned every day. The man who cast me out that night would never have understood that. The man standing in front of me now does." Her words held no malice, only an acknowledgement of the truth. Victor nodded slowly, accepting both the evaluation and the implicit recognition that he had, in fact, changed. "Mommy, Daddy, we're ready!" Luna called from the hallway, where she and Leo waited with their backpacks and science projects. As they moved to join the children, Victor asked softly, "Are you happy, Elisa? Truly?" She looked at David, who was helping Leo adjust his dinosaur diorama. Then back at the twins, healthy, bright, and surrounded by people who loved them. Finally, she considered herself. The woman who had gone from destitution to building a pharmaceutical empire, who had raised extraordinary children alone, and who had now found a peaceful resolution to what had once seemed an unforgivable betrayal. Yes, she answered honestly, not in the way I once imagined, but perhaps in a better way than I could have ever planned. Outside, as they prepared to part ways, the twins going with Elisa and David to science club, Victor heading to a company meeting, Leo suddenly stopped. "Wait," he said seriously. "We forgot something important." The adults exchanged worried glances. "What is it, sweetheart?" Elisa asked. "Our family picture," Leo explained, pointing to the camera that was still on the party's entryway table. "We're supposed to take one after every birthday. It's our tradition." The simple request to document their unconventional family momentarily silenced the adults. It was Luna who solved the practical problem. "We need the timer," she declared, already setting up the camera. "Everyone by the garden wall. Quick." They gathered according to the instructions. Victor and Elisa with the twins between them. David and the others arranged around them. As the timer counted down, Leo and Luna smiled, with the simple joy of children surrounded by adults who had found a way to put love above resentment, forgiveness above revenge. The camera clicked, capturing a moment that would have seemed impossible 2 years before. Not a perfect family by conventional standards, but one that had been forged through extraordinary circumstances into something resilient and real. Later that night, as Elisa reviewed work documents while the twins finished homework at her dining table, her phone buzzed with a message from Victor. He had sent the family photo, accompanied by a simple text. "It's not what either of us imagined, but maybe it's better than we planned. Thank you for showing me that the most powerful revenge was not destruction, but creation." Elisa studied the image, the cheerful faces of her children, surrounded by the unusual extended family they had assembled. Victor was right. The revenge she had finally taken wasn't to destroy him or his company. It was to create something so extraordinary from the ashes of betrayal that it transformed everyone it touched, including herself.